Yeah, no, that was interesting. I mean, so we never established an occupation, and we wanted a home base to work from, especially in the lead up to NATO. And we kind of envisioned that we would use it as a convergence space, although we ended up using something radically different as a convergence space. It was both good and bad. You know, it both allowed us to keep our committees going, but it also made us more insular, you know? And so, you know, it was both good and bad.
And insular in what sense? How did you feel that?
Well, I mean, there's just a huge difference between being outside where the public kind of filters in and out versus just being inside a space. And then also the building that we rented, while I really liked it, had these security measures to get in for everybody. And so not everybody knew the door code, and you'd have to try to do this, and working out that stuff, it just made it harder to get in and less inviting.
Yeah.
And
so it really wasn't a space to hold GAs and public meetings and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no. Although we envisioned it and we tried to make it work, it didn't work out as well as we wanted it to. Yeah.
And the lead up to the G8, what did you envision to begin with, and what shaked out?
Oh wow. Well, I mean, it was weird. We envisioned it to be much bigger when it was both NATO and G8, and it would have been. But even with NATO, we envisioned it, I don't know, we envisioned that it would just, you know, be 10 days of action and would be relatively easy, and that we would have had a lot more people helping. And what shook out was 10 days of action with less people helping and a lot of trauma and burnout afterwards. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But tell us about the 10 days of action, what led up to it, and some of the wild events that actually did take place that are now reverberating in the headlines today.
Yeah, you know, so there were a lot of meetings and a lot of planning and a really good summit working group that it just tirelessly worked on it. Myself, I was busy planning May Day with unions and community groups and immigrant rights groups, and so after I jumped in right after May Day and jumped into the organizing, and you know, we had the People Summit, which was a blast. 500-ish people every day. I mean, it was wonderful. A lot of good discussion, and then you know the actions built consecutively in terms of their intensity. So the first actual day of action was a kind of art fair at Diet High School. This was a school that's being closed down and hasn't had art for too many years. And then there was the immigrants' rights stuff down at the detention center, where there were some arrests. And of course the Catholic workers got arrested here at Prudential Plaza on the Monday as well. But they've been planning that for a while. And you know, and then it moved to the anti-eviction campaign actions, in which we carried around some furniture, had a wonderful speak out, and also deposited the furniture at I think it was the Bank of America across the street, and the furniture got arrested, which was funny. And then, oh geez, I can't even remember them all now. Thursday, what was Thursday? Oh, Thursday was the environmental action out here at the Canadian Plaza. You know, spent a lot of time making the goop for people to kind of spread all over themselves. Yeah. And then Friday, of course, was with the nurses. Yeah, that was wonderful. Over 2,000 nurses, and then there was a march afterwards that just apparently didn't end. So one of the things that we learned was that there were buses and buses of about 500 or more people coming in that the nurses had actually coordinated from across the country. We didn't anticipate that many people, and we didn't anticipate that many people with nowhere to stay. So actually a lot of our organizing time from Wednesday to Friday was trying to coordinate what to do with all these people and all their stuff, who had no money, no place to stay, etc. But one thing they did like to do is go on endless marches, and so the first endless march I think happened on that Friday, right? And that's also the day in which the police ran over somebody with their van. It's also the day in which the police decided to use their bikes as battering rams against them. It's also the day in which we decided to continuously break through police lines in this kind of autonomous zigzagging march. And so that was one of the big lead-ups into the weekend. And on Saturday we took it to Rahm's house, which was fun. But of course then Sunday, with over, what was it, 12 to 15,000 people marched. And then I was there at the end when people were getting beat mercilessly against the police. And I've never in my life seen so many. I would even say before then, at the Woodlawn occupation, or where the infiltrators were first kind of insinuated themselves. And in May Day, it became apparent because they even created a split within the Black Bloc in trying to agitate once we got downtown with the police. I mean, it's hard within a democratic, open, transparent movement to kind of retrospectively try to figure out what to do with something like infiltration. I mean, I first became aware of it when I guess it was Wednesday night during the week of actions. You know, it was like 2 in the morning and we were at Clark's up on Belmont, not too far from the convergence space, like trying to eat for the first time that day. And one of our really good friends who lived at the house was getting texts from her partner saying that the house was surrounded with 16 police cars, don't come home. You know, she arranged to go and pick them up. And so they all would have been arrested if they were there. So we're able to get 3 people out, and then trying to coordinate safe houses for them. Yeah, no.
And this was the house with the brewery?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the house with the brewery. And so it's, I mean, and that began a whole wave of intimidation, of more raids, of etc., in which like we actually had to uproot a lot of key organizers and try to move them around and institute check-ins with each other every 6 hours and stuff like this. And so in the midst of all of this intense organizing with these kids who didn't have money or a place to stay, and then trying to pull off these actions and coordinate them and make sure that, you know, they didn't end in riots or too many bloody heads, we're also moving each other around, trying to keep each other safe from not only state infiltration and manipulation, but also arrest, and detaining for, and so it was, the reverberations now after NATO are actually really intense. A lot of us experienced PTSD for a few weeks afterwards, you know, just constantly on edge, not able to sleep, paranoid, extreme paranoia. And so it took, some of us went to counseling, some of us, we provided each other with counseling. The med team helped out with that and stuff.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, not many people experience that level of violence.
No. Yeah, I mean, both in terms of like police infiltration, but also in terms of like, you know, on that Sunday at the end of the march, I mean, you not only see heads getting cracked and you put your helmet on so that your head doesn't get too cracked, but like you also, all of your friends come up and they have blood on their shirts, and you ask them if they're okay, and they're like, yeah, and they're like, why? And you're like, well, we've got blood all over your shirt, and they're like, it's not mine. And you see people, you know, going off into the alleys, holding their heads with gashes, and the police not letting the med teams get to them in the alleys, and yeah, I mean, and then this is on top of, I mean, there were maybe 500-600 of us at the end, and there were, you know, 800 police, just busloads of riot cops, state cops with batons and bats, I would call them, not even batons, you know, or bow staffs, whatever the fuck they were carrying, right?
Well, so, for all those policemen with body armor and staffs and clubs and that sort of thing, it didn't seem to be very many EMTs, medical units by the fire department behind them with all of those things that they planned as far as violent acts.
Yeah, absolutely not, there weren't. And they wouldn't even let our own med teams take care of people. I mean, the thing that sticks out with me and the thing that reverberates most for me from that confrontation was the absolute disproportionate kind of relationship of violence, right? You have, you know, people with apple cider vinegar mask on and like bike helmets, you know, and a water bottle that they'll throw that bounces off the cop's helmet, and the cops in riot gear and shields and batons and guns and LRADs and horses. The absolute dominance of state violence was crystal clear, and we looked less like David in a David and Goliath. It was paltry. It was scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think made people want to stand up in the face of that?
I mean, you can come up with a lot of answers. You know, for me, it was I just wanted to be there with my comrades to help. You know, I wasn't going to leave them. Some people, it's just, you know, we're standing your ground, even in the face of it. Some people, it's standing the ground in order to expose the disproportionate relationship between people's power and state violence. You know, and for some people, you know, I mean, I think the lesson we can draw from it is that, like, if we have apple cider vinegar bandanas and bike helmets and water bottles, and they bring out that show of force, to me it only shows how scared they are of what we have.